Council, it is 6 p.m. on Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. I'll call this regular meeting of the Barre City Council to order. Councilor Manager, are there adjustments to the agenda? I know we'll be adding under 8G a discussion regarding CDBG-DR funds, cities CDBG-DR projects that we'd like to put forward, and this will be the first, just trying to set the table for it. This will be the first in a series of discussions that we'll have. I'm sorry?
I can barely hear.
Oh, I apologize. I'll try to speak up. Yes, Councilor Spalding.
I'd like to add an item to the agenda to discuss the reconsideration of an appointment for a cemetery committee member.
And where would you like to add that? Under 8H?
Sure.
Okay. And we will do that.
I have something too.
Yes.
I have an email messages we all received. My constituent Sue Higbee had some excellent suggestions, raised some concerns, and had some suggestions about how we handle our public comment and process, and I would like to talk about that. Can we add it in 8 somewhere?
Sure. Under 8I?
Super, thank you.
Yep, happy to do that. Under visitors and communications, anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the...
None of us can hear you.
I'm sorry?
None of us over here can hear you.
Move up.
None of us here.
I could put a row of chairs across the front here if that would help.
Okay.
That's all.
No, I mean-
Into the microphone. She was
The-
Okay,
away.
These,
try to. Yes. Yes.
I was, no, never mind.
I'll try to speak up, sir. I apologize.
Thank you very much.
So are there anyone wishing to address the council regarding an item that is not on the agenda?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind coming up right here to this microphone and stating your name for the record, that would be fantastic.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why doesn't the city,
Well, wait a minute, you're not, because it doesn't pick you up, so folks at home, there you go.
why doesn't the city condemn the derelict buildings that are festering pustules in our neighborhoods and on Main Street? I mean, some group is coming up with $1 million to pay that Shylock from Montpelier for J.J. Newberry's, the old J.J. Newberry's and Endicott Johnson, and those buildings are derelict.
I'd like to join in this discussion, if I may. I have
Sure.
some concern.
Yeah, that's fine.
Could I ask for your name?
Joe Crozier.
Joe Crozier, and sorry?
Richard Heitman.
Thank you.
We're neighbors, but we have a problem on our street with a derelict building that has driven us crazy for 3 years now. Or more. Or more. The woman who was there was a Section 8 woman, which I don't have anything against. But she had state children, and they grew up, and then she found a boyfriend and had 3 children of her own, and she still was on Section 8, and the landlady was trying to get rid of her, and it took until last year. During that time, she boarded dogs. She ran a puppy mill, and she sold them for $700 or $800 each one. And she brought them over to my property and to his property to defecate all over the place, and I mean, all over. I got really angry. I asked her to please pick it up. Never happened. So finally, she was thrown out. And when she went up to where she lives now, she was arrested. Her children went to school and they smelled like dog feces. And they took her children away from her. They arrested her. And they went down to the building she was living in with her boyfriend. And they found 25 cages of dogs and a dead boa constrictor and her boyfriend raised boa constrictors for sale, and a dead dog in the freezer. And I mean, it didn't take them but a week, and I've been complaining, he's been complaining. Why don't they
The
just,
building's condemned and nothing happens.
nothing? It isn't condemned, you don't
I
condemn
think
them.
it is.
Excuse me, what's the address?
What are they, 15? I'm in
16.
21 Brooklyn.
15, I think it's 15.
The numbers are odd, but I think they're 15.
Yeah, you're on the odd side.
I know exactly what it is.
I mean, it's all boarded up.
It should be torn down.
It stinks. You can't
or
walk
something,
by it.
and
It's
my
just,
property values are decreasing. My property taxes are going up.
well, after the flood, our property taxes are going up. and
Well,
now-
that's flood insurance, and that's, you know.
Okay, Nicholas, do you want to respond? Or I can.
You can start, I can pick up from there.
Well, first of all, obviously, this is the first I've heard about this. I'm not sure, have you been communicating regularly with the city? It sounds like you have been, but I'm asking a question.
Went to, go ahead.
I did once or twice, and nothing happens.
Well, I went to the guy, the health person. He never came down. And I tell you that this
like nobody
stuff
cares
was this
about us.
thick on my property. And after she moved out, I put some bricks across there so nobody could park there, so nobody could bring their dogs there. I cleaned it up. It's taken me 6 months to get the dirt so that I can grow lawn on it. It's
So you've complained, you've filed a complaint the first time? Oh, this is the first time?
This is the first time.
Being here, okay, I see. And you, sir, you've called 2 times anyway that you can recall over a period of time? Okay, so you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll talk to code enforcement. This is the first time I'm hearing of that issue at that address. It's possible, but I'll follow up with code enforcement. And we'll go from there. I mean, part of it is,
You buy dilapidated
Okay,
buildings.
sir,
You can't fix
if
this.
he's trying to answer your question, just let him finish, and then I'm happy to let you speak, okay? It's okay.
yeah, we try, given the housing crisis, we also try to not lose buildings and space, right? So if it's a building that can be somehow salvaged, that's what we're going to try to do as well, which is a reason that there were a lot of buyouts that didn't go through, right? Because we're trying to salvage as much housing as we can. And I know that, you're shaking your head about it, but that's the reality that we're in. We have to save as much space and structure as we can, and even if it's derelict and somebody can save it, we'll try to do that. Now, the other piece is that seizing somebody's property is really difficult to do legally. And so I know the conversation started with the reference to 143 North Main Street, but going through an eminent domain process at best is a coin flip after spending lots of money on legal fees. And so, but what you've shared is certainly unacceptable from a neighbor to a neighbor, and that's something that I'll speak with code enforcement about tomorrow morning and make sure that that's addressed.
So can we at least make a commitment to these gentlemen that within a week, someone from the city will be out there
Yeah.
to look at the property, and they will contact the property owner?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just want to echo what the manager said about eminent domain and a municipality or the state or even the federal government seizing a property. For the most part, it's a myth. Now, federal government could seize property if you were building a highway. If you were building an interstate, then there is a process to go through where you can show the greater good. The frustrating thing is, believe me, I share your frustration as someone who has spent a lifetime wanting to be proud of every property that I own. And I make it a point to be able to be proud of every property I own. And I consider that my responsibility. When Karen and I buy a property on Main Street, we consider our responsibility to make it as good as it can possibly be. And it's frustrating me. I would be embarrassed to own that building that you were referring to. But unfortunately, some people have different standards, and when they don't live in a community, they don't hold themselves to that sort of standard. I mean, if I owned that building, I wouldn't show my face on the street, and that's simply a fact. That's the way it is. But that building, it's derelict, there's no doubt about it, but it's not falling over. There's not an imminent, if there was an imminent health hazard where literally structurally, unfortunately, structurally, that building is fairly sound. Aesthetically, it's disgusting.
Property value.
Yep, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, because I don't get
It's
it.
got reappraised, and I know it's gonna be higher than the property is worth.
I share your frustration in that regard. But like I said, to pursue a path of eminent domain for that particular property or even others is it's a very long, a very expensive process, and generally municipalities don't win.
I'm sorry, but I've got to say, I think you guys care more about yourselves than the citizens of Barre.
I don't think
Well,
that, but
I do.
Some folks would
I
differ.
know, I will say good night.
Good night. It's okay.
I know that you are bound by the law. The city is bound by the law, but so are we. That building we're talking about on Brooklyn Street I'm losing my voice, has been broken into 3 times. And we watch it, and each time it's been by young people who are homeless. And they've been in this building which is filled with dog crap. I mean, it's unbelievable. And they've had things to keep them warm in the winter, and we fear that it will burn down. And then, anyway.
We'll have
So,
someone
we
out there,
told-
you heard the manager, we will be responding within a week.
Thank you.
And where do you live in relation,
I live at 121.
would you mind if someone stops at your, after they respond, would you mind if they communicate with you?
Sure.
So you live
The
at
building I'm
one,
talking about is across the street from what the city calls my art studio. It's at 16 Brooklyn Street.
yeah, I know where you are.
It's in good shape. I mean, after the flood, I spent my life savings getting that place back together.
I remember.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Joe.
Okay, is there anyone else under visitors and communicate?
Hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Erica?
Hi, Erica Rail. I live in Ward 3, Bassett Street. I just want to remind folks that today was June 1st. We had 630 folks that were statewide that were evicted from hotels today. Those were families and the medically vulnerable. We don't know how many of those were included because those were families. We don't know how many children were evicted from hotels. They will be on the streets tonight. And medically vulnerable, I'm talking about folks in wheelchairs, folks that were using oxygen compressors. They no longer can do that because there's no electricity, as you know, on the streets. They will be dying. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen?
Yes, Ellen Kay. I want to also speak about that is July 1st, and this is the exit of people from shelter, as Erica has just talked about, and I want to take my time to read exactly what's needed. And this is a call out to our whole community. Items in desperate need, 3, 4, 6, and 10-person tents in clean and usable condition, with all parts included. 8 by 10 foot and larger tarps. Earth tones preferred, not blue or bright colors. Sleeping bags for kids or adults and adults. Bed mats, camping mats, blankets, hammocks, bug netting for hammocks, bug netting, stakes, tent stakes, flashlights, headlamps, lanterns, AA and AAA batteries, paracords, ratchet straps, camping or military style cots, camping chairs, pull behind carts, camping stove, camping cook sets, green bottle propane, butane, multi-tool, hatchet, camp saws, camping shovel, buckets with lids, pool noodles with hole in center, garbage bags non-scented, small garbage bags non-scented, large Ziploc bags, dry bags, totes or waterproof containers for belongings, first aid kits, bear-proof containers, rechargeable or battery-operated coolers or fridges, coolers, rechargeable battery packs for phones, portable power station, CPAP power station, hiking sticks, socks, sneakers, hiking shoes for adults, rain gear, sunscreen, sunburn gel, bug spray, tick keys, tick repellent, cleaning wipes, wet wipes, body wipes, shoe powder, hair brushes, combs, duct tape, tent repair tape, zipper repair, outdoor showers, water purifying tablets, camping water purification. And if you don't have any of that stuff, gift cards for gas, for stores, or cash donations to the Good Samaritan Haven. I read this list because it quantifies and makes concrete what it is to be without shelter, what kind of desperation people have to be feeling right now. And before I close, I want to point out the sad irony that tonight you will be approving a measure, an ordinance that may further criminalize people without shelter, may further marginalize them, even if it's not criminalizing them, but further marginalize, push out. These are people who already have no place to go. So I hope we can reacquaint ourselves with our humanity tonight. If you need more information, please go to the Good Samaritan website or Facebook page and donate money or things. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that your question, Councilor?
That was just where we could go to donate. I have some stuff. I've been homeless myself before, so I understand. So I'd like to donate some stuff and gather some stuff. So would the Good Sam be a good place to drop that off?
That's, yeah, there's the place that's on 302 up
Yep, the
behind
Welcome Center.
hotel. Erica probably knows better than me, but it's, yeah, it's on their website and it's on their Facebook page.
Okay.
Exactly where you drop these things off.
Yeah, usually it's the Welcome Center for the Good Sam over on 302.
Yep, that's the one. It's up behind that motel.
Yep, I know what you're talking about. All right, Alan, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, anyone else under visitors and communications? Okay, hearing and seeing no one, council will move on to the consent agenda. We'll be asking you to approve the minutes for the meeting of 6/17/25. Do you have any licenses and permits for council approval? Okay, there are no licenses and permits to approve under the consent agenda. We'll be accepting the resignation of and thanking Lisa Bernard for her service on the TPW committee. We'll be accepting the property at 100 Brook Street and recording the quitclaim deed received from the estate of Badeau. We'll be authorizing the manager to accept a trail marker commemorating General Lafayette's passage through Barre. And I spoke briefly with Councilor Guston regarding the eventual location on that. I don't know if, have you and Nicholas had a chance to speak? And
yes.
so just as an update, where's it going to be?
I think the preferred location was somewhere at the Historical Society lawn.
So we spoke briefly about
yeah.
this. We haven't necessarily yet made a final decision.
Okay.
It can go into either location. I'm realizing as you read that out loud that I forgot to do the final conversation. Apologies.
No, that's okay.
That's a good flag, Mayor. The letter has two locations listed, which is what we've discussed with the organization that does this. One is City Hall Park, the other is the Historical Society. I think it'll go one of those. The preferred outcome is Historical Society, and we'll just work through the final pieces together.
Okay with
Confident
that.
one of
I
those
assume
two will work
council
out.
is as well. And do you have any contracts to execute?
None this week.
Okay, and there are no contracts to execute, so a motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It is moved, it is seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. Council, under 4A, we'll be asking you to approve the city warrants of 7/2/25 and ratify the week of 6/25/25. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Were you abstaining? Okay. So we'll record you as an aye. Ms. City Clerk and Treasurer, and as I pointed out to the City Clerk, the City Treasurer, because we actually have individuals in those positions now. Going forward, we'll actually have a City Clerk report and then a City Treasurer's report. But that one, saying it was, Miss, we'd be happy to accept a report from you, but seeing as it was your first day, we'll cut you a little slack. So,
I actually have nothing to report. That's new.
wow. That's awesome. Well, it's not awesome, but moving us along. Council, I'll call the Liquor and Cannabis Control Board to order. You have a few licenses,
Yes, and I
correct?
actually, last minute got approval for one that I'm adding on.
And those are?
All right, we got Pearl Street Pizza for first and third class, Morris Block Deli for first and third class, the Elks Lodge for tobacco license or permit, and the Mexican Cuisine Arianda's tobacco substitute. And they all have police department approval and fire marshal approval.
Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Take your pick. Is there any discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, motion carries. Liquor Cannabis Control Board is adjourned. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple updates for the council and the public. I sent out notifications that there'll be overnight line striping on Wednesday night. So we'll be focusing on the Main Street crosswalks. Stop bars and lane markings are continuing as staff is available to do them. We've also, if you've noticed, this year touched up all the yellow curb paint, so they also, that's delayed some of the other line striping, but the yellow striping hadn't been covered in some time. So just ask people to use caution and respect, the road signs and crew instructions. This is our crews working out in traffic, so we want to make sure that they get home safely. We have reached out to the state about, the state is in charge of line markings for the state roads through the city, so that's Main Street, Washington, Hill, and Maple, and we have heard that they may not be completed until October. So they've been marked, and they have, you might see, if you look closely, you might see the spray paint where they are going to come through and stripe. But the timing is they may not be done until October. So just urge people's patience with that. And hopefully they'll be here sooner than that. The water line connection at Hill Street, I know, Mayor, you brought this up last week. There's some rough pavement there right across from 22 Hill Street where Habitat is building a new home. We've checked in regularly with the contractor and Habitat this week and last. They have stay mat there that has to be compacted, so it has to be unpaved for one more week, but they're planning to repave it second week of July. So we're trying to keep it compact. We're trying to make sure that the contractor is watching it. I know that's been a little bit of a rough spot there for people that make the trip up and down Hill Street.
They did jump, in fairness to them, I brought it up at the last meeting, they did jump right on it, but it got bad again.
Yes.
Just recently, like literally within the last couple of days. So thank you, because I can tell they're making an effort.
Yes.
But if they could just touch it up like they did the last time, that would.
We will do that. We will do that. And hopefully they'll be paving it here next week anyhow, so it'll be short-lived. But yes, we will make sure they keep an eye on it. The planning permitting office is closed this week. Janet is on well-deserved vacation. Michelle has transitioned to the rec coordinator position, so that office is closed until Monday, July 7th. So if you have any business there, please wait to come back after the holiday weekend. And I did have an update that was touched on earlier. I did want to touch base on the exits from the motel program, let you know the impact here in Barre. So just more broadly, the Emergency Housing Assistance Program is limited to 80 days within a 12-month period, which is counted on a rolling basis, when this means that each day of assistance used in the past year counts towards the limit. That's what the state law is. And so days spent in emergency winter housing from December 1st to March 31st do not count toward that limit. The impact in Barre is, according to DCF, the Department of Children and Families, is about 60 households, which includes 89 adults, 20 children, so 189 individuals total. We have the third highest number.
Sorry, could you do that?
Sure.
Your math didn't.
109, did I say?
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you said 189.
I'm sorry.
So I just, yeah.
It's written correctly on my paper. I don't know what I was making, seeing the wrong number. 60 households, 89 adults, 20 children, 109 individuals total. We have the third highest number of households in the state, behind Burlington and Rutland. The fourth highest number of individuals, behind Burlington, Rutland, and Bennington. And of the total program, Barre represents about 12.5% of households and 11.2% of individuals. So, we're fairly high up there on the impact list of the program ending. And just wanted to share those numbers with you that were shared with us last week. That is all for me.
Thank you. Question? Yes.
Regarding the line marking, is it possible, because this is like a complaint that I hear a lot and I have myself, is there a way maybe we could put an announcement out on Regroup so people don't think that we're just, not choosing
Yeah,
to
of
mark
course.
the most well-traveled routes,
Of
which are
course.
state routes?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Counselor.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would be helpful. Thank you.
sure.
Anything else? Yes.
So I had a couple of constituents reach out about the paving on Allen Street and Prospect Street. And one in particular was curious about possibly how we could work about redoing the intersection at Prospect and Allen. Kind of like how it's done over by Hope Cemetery. Would that bump out or over on Hill Street or something to that effect? So they wanted to know how we could get working on a process to whether or not that would be feasible and how that would go about.
Yeah, let me check with Brian Baker on that. I know that they've been working on the prep site there. I don't know if they'll have, I don't know if we have a date yet from the contractor about when they'll be in town. I don't believe they'll be here until September, so there may be time. I don't know if there's time to design something like that, but let me check with Brian to see what's possible. I just don't know, speaking here, but I will certainly check with Brian.
But at the very least, we can get a crosswalk and put it
Yeah,
over there.
yep.
Wonderful, thank you.
Awesome. Anything else? Okay, council, moving right along, we'll move to new business. Went a lot faster than I thought it would. Come right up. Council, we have a new appointment. This is Bernadette Gayat. How are you? And just pull that mic, if you don't mind, just pull it right over towards you. There you go.
Out there in Never Never Land, or can hear.
So Bernadette, what I'm going to do is just give you the floor so you can introduce
Okay.
yourself, talk a little bit about your interest in the committee.
Okay, so, and I'll keep it short.
You take
Anyway,
as long as you
whatever.
need.
Okay, so I'm Bernadette Gayat. I'm actually from Barre City. I grew up here, and Michael, I'll just say, Mr. Deering actually asked me to be on the Parks and Rec Committee, and I'd like to say yes. I want to see how it goes and stuff. But at the same time, that's my background. I went to school at Springfield College for recreation, so I've done that. I worked in the Montpelier Rec Department. Jeff, you know me, because Stephanie and I work together a lot doing programs. I'm really excited to do something for Barre City kids and adults. I did stuff like that too. There's just a lot that we can do. It's, pocket parks, stuff like that, but without getting into it in High Nicholas. So that's basically, after hearing that other gentleman, I'm like, oh, wow, Barre City has definitely changed a lot from when I was a lot younger. But the good thing is I also work in the school system, so I see that. So, well educated that way. And I feel like there's a lot we can do there, and the park, it's almost like I look at the rec department as kind of like a nice place to be, where I can envision kind of like hoping to bring people together, So, and the cool thing is I met Michelle because of the zoning. So, yeah, anyway, that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
So you have a background in recreation? Check. So that's good. Have you had an opportunity to attend any of the Parks and Rec meetings, or have you looked online, looked at some of their minutes maybe?
I know, actually, no, I didn't. Mr. Deering gave me stuff like that to look. I know, thank you very much. It was a crazy day, so no, I haven't. I feel like I have had that experience with, my past experience doing stuff like that, going to meetings like that. Not within Barre City, though.
Right.
So.
That's okay. So this isn't a question that's directed to you. It's a question that I ask all new appointees. I just ask them if they've thought about the commitment that they're making and whether they're prepared to make that commitment. As grateful as we are, when people volunteer, and believe me, we need more. There are a lot of vacancies on committees. And as grateful as I am when people volunteer, it's also really important to me that they've thought it through so that they don't attend one or two meetings and then say,
Right. Exactly, yeah. And I understand this is like once a month.
Correct.
And maybe there might be, that's what I'd like to find out from Michelle is like, is once a month, and how, what else do we do? I'm honestly, I'm not sure. So, yeah, just being honest with you.
No one's ever answered that question that way, but I love honesty, so I'm okay with it. Anyone else for questions? Yes.
I would just say that the Recreation Committee hasn't met in some time, so I don't know that there would have been the opportunity to observe a meeting, just to say that. So thank you for for
I
stepping
think
up.
that's a good start, exactly, to go, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, that's definitely a good start, because I can say, yeah, okay, I'd like to be on that, but without actually going and meeting everybody and seeing where they're coming from, I think I'll get a feel of it, with nothing against your one or two. But I think that's fair, right, to check that out, and yes, I would, but I see the possibility of that being on the committee after that, if that's a possibility.
Yeah. So I guess, may I just clarify what you're asking? Are you asking that we hold your appointment until you've had the opportunity to? Well, so here's the other thing. They can't meet right now because they don't have a quorum.
Right.
So there is going to be no opportunity to attend meetings.
You're in.
Yeah.
And I know Tom too, I know.
You do.
Come on, Bernadette, I've known you since fourth grade.
Exactly.
And I just have a quick question for the manager. Will Michelle be staffing the committee going forward? Will that be part of her new position?
Yes, she will, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So is that a possibility to be, not kind of trying to backpedal, but at the same time, just in fairness to you, because it's like, I get it, when you join something, it's like.
Oh, no, you sat down. You're committed. Sorry.
He's the one that told me.
No,
Wasn't it
no.
at school? I think you were like, hey.
No takebacks.
It's a bit, unfortunately, it's a bit of a catch-22, because if we don't appoint you tonight, the committee does not have a quorum and cannot meet.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So there will be no
okay,
opportunities to attend.
point.
So how long is the commitment? Like 6 months, a year?
I believe it's a 2-year term?
2-year term.
2-year term. Oh.
It's not a sentence. It's an appointment, okay?
Yep.
So, look, I understand. I've known you for decades, and I've known your family for decades. And my prediction is, on the one hand, you're sitting here politely and saying, look, I don't want to overcommit, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. So the appointment is a 2-year appointment, but as I said, it's not a sentence. So if you do decide, I hope you don't, but if you decide that it doesn't work out for you, then you would simply resign from the committee. You'd give us 2 years' notice. No. So it's okay.
Yep.
It's okay.
That sounds
Like I
good.
said, I appreciate your honesty.
That
So
sounds good.
council, a motion would be in order, unless there are additional questions.
Just one step.
Yes, of course.
I can vouch for Bernadette because she did do programs with Stephanie a few years back, and she didn't have to be babysat. She ran them all by herself and did a great job.
I'm sure she did. Yes.
I'd also like to add that in Bernadette's capacity as a permanent substitute teacher at Barre City Middle Elementary School, as her supervisor, the sub-coordinator, she's done a phenomenal job with any of those positions within the PE. So
Thank you.
I think she is
that a motion?
outstanding happening. That is absolutely a motion.
And is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Aboard.
I think in the long run too, it's like, this is my town, this is, where I grew up, and there's a lot of changes, and I think I see good things and not so good things, and let's make it positive. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Okay, council, we'll move on to item 8B on the agenda. This should be fairly easy. Ms. Dawes, I'll just have you run through the calculation. I did send this sheet to you, and then Carol filled it out with a much larger packet so you could see all of the background data. Just a little story. Quite a number of years ago, council came incredibly close to setting the wrong tax rate. And so I still have PTSD over that. So what I did is I always, well, as long as I'm sitting here, I ask Ms. Dawes, city clerk, and it would usually be Dawn. Dawn was out this week, so Nicholas was pinch hitting, and myself. So 4 of us independently verify the calculations, both the calculations on the spreadsheet and also the hand-done calculations. So the good news is the homestead tax rate went up a tick over 3%, 3.05. So Ms. Dawes, I'll let you take it from there.
So yes, so you've got probably much more information than you need. But I know that several of you are new to setting the municipal tax rate and the various and sundry moving parts that are included. It is essentially, comes down to a pretty cut and dried math equation where you take the amount of money that was approved by the voters. It's not something that the council does or that staff does. It was approved by the voters. The amount of money to be raised to support the work of the city and the special items that were approved, like the 600 for streets and paving and capital and the money for the local social service agencies, et cetera. And you take that amount, you divide it by the value of the grand list, which is the value of all the properties, the taxable properties in the city. And that tells you what the tax rate needs to be applied to all of those properties to raise that amount of money. We can't arbitrarily raise more than what the voters have asked us to raise. And so that's what the calculation is for the municipal tax rate. And the municipal tax rate as calculated is $2. And then we do carry the calculations out to 4 places. So it's 2.2493. That is the municipal portion. Now, the local agreement portion, which the council doesn't actually set because it's based in statute, but that is the amount of taxes that we are required to raise to make the education fund whole to the state with regards to any properties that the city has, by its own actions, deemed to be tax exempt. There's a few different ways that happens. One is if the council has adopted a tax stabilization agreement for a property. We have 2 active tax stabilization agreements at the moment. We have 1 voter-approved tax stabilization agreement. These are all identified in your packet. That this particular organization, it's Good Samaritan Haven, they have to go to the voters every 5 years and ask to be tax exempt. They'll be coming up, I think, against next year for that vote. And then the other thing is that the state allows the first $10,000 of value for properties owned by veterans to be tax exempt, and the voters can approve an additional $30,000, which our voters did several years ago. But that additional $30,000, we are required as a community to raise the education portion of taxes for that additional $30,000 and pay that to the state for the ed fund. So when you add those things together, the amount of education taxes associated with the tax stabilization agreements, the exemption, the voted exemption for Good Sam, and the voted exemptions for the additional veterans, it comes to, it's a relatively small amount. It's only $29,000 that has to get spread across the entire tax grand list, which is why the local agreement tax rate is a really tiny number. It is 0.0058, so it's essentially half a penny. And that, again, all the numbers have been calculated. That's not a number that the council sets. It's one that we're mandated to do, but the council does, by statute and charter, they have the authority to set the municipal tax rate. So what we're looking for is approval of the FY25, sorry, it should be FY26. Municipal tax rate at 2.2493 and acceptance of the local agreement rate at 0.0058. And I provided all of the backup documentation in your packet, so happy to answer any questions.
So council, the appropriate motion would be to set the 2025/2026 municipal tax rate at 2.2493, and to set the local agreement tax rate for that same period at 0.0058. No, we do not set the education tax rate that is provided to us by the state of Vermont. But we did run through the calculations. Those figures were released, I believe, today? Yesterday. So those figures were released, and we plugged those in just so that the council, and then we created this comparison so the council can see, over the years that how our property tax increases overall. And I've always believed that's what people pay attention to, how they sort of stack up. So as I said earlier, this year, our homestead rate, including the education rate, will be going up 3.05%, so just a tick over 3%. So, as I said, would anyone care to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
One of the other things that I would just point out is I've added on here several years ago, I like to, if you recall, when we're looking at the budgets back in March and April, before the council approves the amount to go in on the ballot, there's a projection as to what we expect the municipal tax rate to be based on the best information that we have at that point in time, but things do change. And I always like to include that on here to see what a good job the staff does in sharpening their pencils. So the municipal rate plus local agreement rate as projected was 2.272, and it ended up being 2.2551. So very, very close and in the right direction. So.
Awesome. Council, everyone understands the motion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, happy first day. It's great to have you back. It gives me great comfort when you can check the work.
Cheryl and I are meeting with the Nemrick people tomorrow to create the file for the tax bills, which are then being sent to the printer. They should be in the mail by the end of next week,
So people should have them, give or take, by July 15th?
Definitely, well before the 15th.
Well before the 15th?
This will be the first time since 2019 that we've been able to be back on schedule for tax due dates. So our first due date will be August 15th as usual, and then the others. So we haven't been able to be on schedule since 2019, so excited
Don't jinx
about
us,
that.
please.
Carol,
Don't jinx us.
Carol, I have a question. So when they show that rate, do they show the comparison from the previous one or the one before that? I'd like to see a line, how it stayed the same or got larger or bigger.
Where?
When they show the tax rate, like you said, it was, what you would surmise it to be was close, but the last time you did it, the rate,
The most comprehensive comparison report is what you have on the sheet here.
Okay.
And, you've got 5 years worth of numbers.
That's
here,
what I want. Okay, I
including
haven't
this
actually
year.
seen
And
that.
The other thing is that we do print up a similar comparison sheet, little chart that gets included with the tax bills. So everybody will get that information. They can look at it when they get their tax bill.
Excellent, thank you.
And I'm happy to answer any questions. Not that I have a phone yet, but you can find me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carol. Council will move on to item 8C on the agenda. It is actually 6:46. This is warned for 6:45. This is the second reading and passage of the public conduct ordinance. Mr. Manager?
Thank you,
And Chief, if
Mayor.
you'd like to come up, it's up to you.
Yeah, I'm joined by the chief tonight. So in terms of, I can speak to both items, Mary, if you'd like. I know they're warned separately because one's an ordinance, the other's the policy, but they travel together. So
Sure.
I'll take this time to address both, and council will have to take two separate votes. The ordinance is included in your packet, council. It did not change from the first reading iteration. As we discussed at the last meeting, we did do some modifications. From the first time we had a first reading on this, we worked really closely with the city attorney. We've looked at, we try to look a lot to what other communities do that could work for us. And that's the product that you have before you. So the ordinance is much leaner. And really what it does is it addressed a lot of the concerns we had heard, as I mentioned last week, which there's no fines associated with this. We heard the complaints about, why are you finding people who may or may not have the ability to find? And I want to make clear, this isn't an ordinance just for people who are unhoused. I want to make sure that's very clear. But that did come up as a concern, and we addressed it, that this goes straight to, there is accountability. The accountability is through no trespass orders that are established by the policy. The only, sort of new offense that was added was public urination defecation, which, as the chief has mentioned to you previously, we didn't have real proper authority to enforce, surprisingly, but now we will if this is enacted. And this did fly under the radar, but we are getting rid of the prohibition on ball playing in the street. So I know that hasn't gotten the airtime that some of the other provisions have, but ball playing in the street will be legal after if this is approved. The policy was amended based on feedback we heard at the first reading of the ordinance and the first review of the policy. Those changes are highlighted in the document you had in the packet. The first change is on page 3 of the policy, page 25 of the packet, which provides that if the appellant does not have the contact information listed in the policy, which includes an address or phone number, that they should provide whatever contact information, whatever information we need to contact them. So that was clarified. We added on page 4 of the policy, page 26 of the packet, language provisions around the process of the hearings. So the hearings are recorded via either video or audio platform, much like a council meeting. If there's a technological failure, this meeting can continue. If there's a technological failure, these hearings would also be able to continue. Either party is allowed to invite a representative or observer to the hearings. The appellant is able to invite witnesses as well, and may make a request to do so. This is language worked through with the city attorney that, sort of for this type of administrative hearing, that there may be, irrelevant or unreliable or repetitive evidence may be excluded. And the hearings would be closed to the public unless otherwise requested by the appellant. Made a very minor technical change to the page 5 of the policy, page 27 of the packet, which provides that this policy goes into effect at the same time as the ordinance, which, if it is approved tonight, would be Saturday, July 19th, which would be 2 days after publishing this in the paper on Saturday. So we're happy to answer any questions. Like I said, the only changes were the ones that I covered in the policy itself.
So, council, just a little table setting. These will require 2 separate votes of the council. Obviously, moving something to a second reading is very different. If substantive changes are made to the document, we would need to start over. We would need to go back to a first hearing. That's exactly what we did the last time. Policies are a little different. Policies, you can make substantive changes to the document and still pass it this evening. So I just wanted to explain that to you. I think the way to proceed would be if council, or any councilor is so inclined, to accept a motion and a second to approve the public conduct ordinance warrant for 6:45, and then we'll open it up to council discussion and then public discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, council, any discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
I continue to be concerned with the constitutional and civil liberties concerns, specifically First Amendment issues, the vagueness of someone being, giving a notice of trespass for being unreasonably disruptive, without defining that term, is very vague and could lead to arbitrary or discriminatory enforcement. I'm concerned about due process concerns because there's no detailed process in the ordinance about what the appeal process looks like. It's in a separate policy. I'm concerned about the vague and broad language. Terms like unreasonably disruptive, dangerous, and lawful directive are not clearly defined, which means there's wide discretion for enforcement officials. That could increase the risk of inconsistent or biased application of the ordinance. And it really makes it hard for the public to know what behavior is prohibited. And third, the potential for over-policing and the disproportionate impact that that might have. This ordinance may disproportionately affect unhoused individuals who use public spaces because they have nowhere else to go, or youth or marginalized groups who may be perceived as disruptive, even though they are just being young people. There's also a concern about authorizing a broad range of officials to issue trespass notices, increasing the chance of subjective enforcement. And finally, I have a concern that this is considered a civil ordinance, but it could escalate into a criminal trespass, and that blurs the line between civil enforcement and criminal prosecution. And that means that we could potentially be penalizing vulnerable individuals with criminal charges stemming from a civil ordinance. So those continue to be my concerns.
Thank you. Council, anyone else? Yes.
I have a comment more about the policy than the ordinance. Would you like me to reserve that?
Could you? Yeah, because we'll be doing like I said, that will be a separate vote. Councilor Ruthier?
I think we keep talking about the same thing over and over in all due respect to Councilwoman. I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill. I think we've been down this road 3 times. There's a term, Elmo, enough, let's move on. I think we move on this and vote it through.
Thank you. I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to say that I share many of Councillor Spaulding's concerns, but I won't enumerate them all since she just did.
Understood. Thank you. And thank you for being brief. I'm going to open it up to public discussion. I think I've been extremely generous with folks. I have an aversion to a strict 2-minute policy. I'd like to give people the opportunity to be heard. However, if a lot of the comments are the same comments by the same people, I also have a bit of an aversion to redundancy. So I just want to say, if you could please, and you're making points, if you could be brief, I would appreciate it. So I'll open it up to anyone who has any comments. Yes, Mr. Heath, you can come sit right next to the chief and behave yourself.
I was here on the last reading, and I don't know if I really drove it home, but I just want to say that this ordinance, in my mind, is designed to keep the streets safe and under control. And in mind, passing the ordinance now is very important to the well-being of the city of Barre. To me, it's just another tool in the law enforcement's toolbox, and to keep things under control and keep the streets in Barre safe, and make Barre a good place for people who want to come and visit and live. Big things come and live here. And so I think that this is just one step. And one of the things to remember is some of these ordinances are not necessarily just written in stone. What it gets down to is that if you find that an ordinance was to be maybe a little too stringent in some areas, you can always change it. And if it's not stringent enough, then you can change that as well. So you see, that's one of the things that's important for folks to realize, and that is that just when you pass an ordinance like this doesn't mean that you can't make changes if changes are needed. So that's the deal. So there you go. That's what I got for you. I'm under 2 minutes.
You did great, Mr. Heath. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to address this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Noted. Motion carries.
Shame.
Okay, council, we will Move on to item 8D on the agenda. This is to approve the city policy for notice of trespass on city property. Same procedure. If you don't mind, I would accept the motion in a
So
second.
moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion from council. Councilor Guston, I think you had a comment earlier. I'll get right to you. Councilor.
Thank you. I just want to say that I do share a lot of the concerns that have been raised about this policy. And if this does move through tonight, I would like to ask the chief and the city manager to return for a 3-month review, very, very thorough and in-depth review of everything that has been, all the actions undertaken under this new policy. I would hope that would include some quality analysis of if any of the concerns that have been shared have come to light as part of the enforcement of this ordinance. So I'm just asking for that this evening. If this
So
does
you're
move forward.
just a keeping of data.
Well, I would, a keeping of data, but also like at a 3-month point in time, like a good deep analysis of that data and presentation back to council.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, we're happy to do that.
Okay, yes.
So I'm not going to go through my concerns with the procedures and policy because they are much the same. Potential violation of due process rights, vagueness and overbreadth, limits on access to public forums, disproportionate impact and equity issues, practical enforcement issues, implications for constitutional and protected activities, procedural fairness and transparency. I'll be perfectly honest, I ran this through ChatGPT and these were their recommendations for addressing the concerns. 1, clarify vague language to reduce subjective interpretations. 2, strengthen due process protections such as requiring a prompt hearing before excluding someone in non-exigent cases. 3, provide explicit protections for First Amendment activities. 4, add an external or independent review option for appeals. 5, require data collection and reporting on issued notices to monitor inequity impacts. And 6, ensure robust and accessible waiver and appeal procedures, especially for vulnerable groups. I would be in favor of, or be more in favor of this if we could address some of those concerns.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council? Yes.
So, Mr. Manager, are you able to authorize or issue these no trespasses as a city official?
I don't know if, I don't think I would unless I was the in-charge official of a building.
So you wouldn't like respond to a park or a place and tell them as a city official?
No, as a general practice, I wouldn't do that anyway. And I think a park would be under the direction of the police department. I think the only other authorizing official who might be included might be someone who's in charge of the auditorium or the BOR. But practically what I mentioned at the first reading and the first time we looked at this policy is that from an implementation standpoint, our guidance to staff is going to be to always call the police department, which is what it is now. We don't encourage staff to address these issues on their own. And so I don't think under this definition, unless I was in charge of the BOR for some reason, I wouldn't be able to issue a no trespassing order. And based on the direction we're going to give staff in terms of implementing it, I wouldn't do that in any case because I would call dispatch just like anybody else would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess my only concern with this is just if you were issuing one of those trespass orders and also being the person that would be hearing that.
Yeah. If that were ever to happen, the correct procedure would be for me to not conduct the hearing and to have the designee conduct the hearing at that point. So I don't foresee it ever happening, but if it ever would, that would be the appropriate action, which I do on occasion. So for example, I mentioned in the past, I was a member of Rotary and there were any Rotary issues that came up, I would recuse myself from that. I have a child in Black Bears. If any Black Bears issues come up, I recuse myself from that. So those are much simpler, less controversial topics. But if this were ever to be the case, I would do the same thing, which would be to recuse and have the designee do the hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Gus?
Could we put that in writing within the policy, some kind of conflict of interest language to address that concern? It could go under C, all appeals under this policy shall be heard by the the decision maker is either involved in a hearing or something like that, or there is a conflict of interest with the hearing, they should recuse themselves. I'm mangling the language here, and I'm sorry,
I
but.
get it. I'm thinking about our conflict of interest policy, which is currently in effect. That would require recusal in certain instances. For example, if the police department served the manager with an order of no trespassing, I obviously can't conduct his own hearing. That would be and that would actually, or a family member or a close friend, that would actually be covered in our conflict of interest policy. I don't know that our conflict of interest policy would cover an instance where the manager was the issuer of the no trespass order. So we could certainly add that line, and I don't think that's unreasonable. And we could certainly add a line. We could approve, again, we could approve it this evening because policies don't require a 30, 15, whatever day warn. So we could approve this policy this evening with the manager's commitment that at the next city council meeting, he will amend the policy and bring it back.
Yeah, that's fine because
If that's acceptable to you.
So I would just add that ask that the language be broad because it does allow the manager to make a designee. So there could be envisioning circumstances under which the designee is the person who is issued. I would just ask that whatever language goes into that be broad enough to envision those circumstances.
I think
No, it's a good catch. I mean, you could simply say the assistant city manager. In an instance where the manager, in other words, the manager has no latitude, it automatically falls to the assistant manager. So that way you couldn't say, gee, you're designating someone who's going to be nice to you.
Or just at no time shall the decision maker be a person who is issued a notice of trespass, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
That's fine. I would just note that, yeah, that's totally acceptable, and the next council meeting is scheduled for before when the ordinance would go into effect, so we can certainly make that change at the next council meeting without impacting implementation. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, of course.
Could I ask a question about the conflict of interest? Is the conflict of interest policy applies to council, though? It doesn't necessarily apply to the city manager. Is that
It
true?
applies to all employees. The city of Barre has a conflict of interest policy that covers employees, no?
I think so. I think so. We've just issued one.
Okay.
Through HR. So if the council one doesn't, the HR one applies to me.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from council? LNK?
Yes, I want to reiterate that we have an equity impact assessment tool that was not used for this. This policy and the ordinance targets people with no power and no money. This is about poor people. And the city council 2 years ago or 3 years ago adopted the equity impact assessment tool. And I know we've talked to you about this before. You're not using it. And you are barreling this through without any of that. So I want that on the record, that there are serious concerns about something that targets people who have no power, have no money, have no lawyers, have no friends in high places. And as I said, this is July 1st. 109 people are displaced into our city. And this is a tool for further marginalizing those people. And I am very sorry that you're going to approve both of these things tonight.
Thank you. Lisa Liotta?
Thank you. I wanted to ask the chief, when you're issuing a trespass order to someone, is there ever a time when that person is unwilling to receive it or combative or potentially cause a risk to the person who's issuing that trespass order?
There are certain instances, yes, where people say they don't want to accept it. It is thereby considered issued, though, once you fill it out and hand it to them. If they throw it on the ground, don't accept it, it's still issued.
Okay, so are the staff who would be in the position to issue trespass orders, I noticed city officials was mentioned, are they going to receive any training on how to do this?
Again, the manager had stated that the majority of times, we're going to be contacted. On a rare circumstance where there's an issue at the BOR, say at a hockey game, there's always officers there during the hockey games, so there's an officer present for those. But there may be a circumstance where an officer isn't present at a function at a BOR where they have to issue a trespass notice. And I would imagine that if it turned volatile, they would notify the police department.
Perhaps,
So
if I
if
could
the
just.
police, if the police are
The
almost
manager
always
wanted to
gonna
answer
be
your question. He
available.
said, just one second.
If I could just follow up, just because I answered it with the last person who spoke, and as I mentioned, I'll mention again, the implementation of this ordinance through our directive to staff will be to contact the police department to issue these no trespass orders. So the ordinance is written in a way that's provides some flexibility in that, but the implementation is going to be, again, to have a police officer who is trained to do this, respond to tonight. This is our practice today. If there's a disruptive incident at the BOR, if there's a disruptive incident in a park, at the pool, wherever, our instructions to staff is not to confront those individuals. Our instructions to staff is to contact the police department so that they may respond because they are trained to do so in an appropriate manner.
So why have it in the ordinance?
Because it provides us flexibility. That's, as I just said in my response.
Are those staff going to be trained? And my follow-up question to that.
They're going to be trained to contact the police department. I don't envision any staff issuing these ordinances. Now, if a future city manager or future police chief want to change that, they certainly may. But as I've said, and I'll continue to say, they will be trained to contact the police department. And that's how we will have staff implementing this.
Sure. But does not this say that city officials would issue a trespass order? And that just seems like it doesn't need to be in there if they're going to call the police. And my follow-up question is, if you are going to leave that in, that city officials can issue a trespass order, will that be included in their job description? And have you consulted VLCT on the insurance and liability related to that?
I just don't know how many more times I can answer the same question. I think I've answered it 5
I don't know how
times
many more
already.
times
Thank
we
you.
have to keep saying, why does it have to be in there?
Thank you. Yes, Councilor.
Again, I think we're beating a dead horse. This is a democracy. Council people were elected by the people to make decisions. So when we vote, I mean, if we listen to every person against it and go on and on and on, you know, sometimes things don't just work the way you want them. That's why it's a democracy with council people representing 3 wards with the police department that was elected and trained. So again, I move that we just pass this and go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor.
I'm just really concerned with the language talking about vulnerable people and homeless or really just marginalized populations, because what I see in this is talking about behaviors that we aren't willing to allow in our community, setting that these things aren't going to be allowed. It's not that we're saying you can't be homeless. We're not saying you can't do homeless things, we'll say, because who even really knows what that would be? But to say that you can't engage in sexual conduct or lewd behavior, you can't engage in stalking, you can't be creating unreasonable noise. Yes, that is up to interpretation, absolutely, just like most things in life are. But if they're to an extreme where somebody's feeling uncomfortable, that they need to call the police, then it's probably an issue that the police should probably handle. But these things are expectations that we're setting for our community and saying these are the things that we're not going to allow in our public spaces. Our community has said time and time again that we want better. We expect better. We're trying to provide better here, but we hear about we're disproportionately impacting the marginalized community. You know what? I live in the marginalized community. I live in the low income. I live in the poverty. And what this is doing is telling people that are doing these behaviors that in Barre City, this isn't welcome or wanted. This behavior, these types of actions aren't acceptable. They're not good for our community. They're not good for our children that we're trying to teach and to lead them by example. What we're trying to do is say, this is what's acceptable. These are the things that are absolutely not acceptable. And if you are willing to participate or engage in this behavior, these are the consequences for your actions. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Yes, Erica Real?
So my question isn't, I had a person show up in my place of work in a paper gown, and we didn't once call the police or the decision maker or whatnot. We talked to him. We just accepted him for who he was. He didn't have shoes. He didn't have socks. We gave him what he needed, which were shoes, socks, a change of clothes. We talked with him. We got him what he needed, which was just a person to listen. And we got him what he needed. But, these wouldn't be acceptable behaviors, in the community. So what I'm trying to say is, we didn't have the police called. We didn't have Washington County Mental Health called. We just talked with him. You say, your elected officials. I didn't vote for any of the people in my ward. I didn't vote for the police. I just talked with him. We got him what he needed. He's a marginalized individual. He's a vulnerable individual. We talked with him. These are what the folks need. They need somebody to talk with them, to get them what they need. They don't need ordinances. They don't need no trespass orders. They need somebody to talk with. They need somebody who cares. So I can say, screw your ordinances. I've been to all the meetings, all of them. We did not ask for these ordinances. We asked for more lights. We didn't ask for security cameras. We asked for, just for kindness, compassion for folks that are marginalized. So screw this. That's why I say shame. No, Ruth here, you do not get to talk. I'm talking.
No, actually, Erica, I'll decide who's talking. I chair the meeting, and I haven't interrupted you. Any other comments specific to the city policy for notice of no trespass on city property? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I just might close a loop on a question that had come up on the conflict of interest policy. I did look at the city council policy, and I am covered by it as public officers defined as person elected or appointed to perform executive administrative duties, and that covers me. Conflict of interest is the definition includes a situation where a public officer has publicly displayed a prejudgment of the merits of an individual group. So I think that would cover it. I'm more than happy to make the amendments that were discussed, but I think the existing policy would also have covered it if that hadn't been flagged. So
I'll leave that up to Councilor Guston. I mean, personally, having heard that, I recognize instantly when you talked about conflicts of interest that would defer to the conflict of interest policy. If that's not clear enough, like I said, happy to have the manager alter it and bring it back one more time.
Yeah, I think it covers part of the concern I had raised, which is about the conflict of interest within that direct piece. But I think the policy is written broadly enough that it is not always the manager who is the decision maker, and the conflict of interest policy does not necessarily cover a specific situation in which the decision maker could theoretically also be the person who has issued the notice of trespass. And so I would still prefer to add a little bit of extra language to strengthen that piece.
Fair enough. Like I said, we can approve this evening so that it's in place and then have the manager bring it back at our next meeting. Did you have your hand up,
No,
Councilor?
I was just going to make sure, I was going to say that I agree with Kim.
Ellen, did you have your hand up again? Or is it, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on specifically that point. In our unions, we have, when we do grievances, there's like a chain of authority, and it's specifically laid out. So I think that you can have that the manager is the decision maker, and who's next, who's next, who's next. If he's out, if he has a conflict of interest, you outline that clearly so it's transparent. And people know what to expect, and there's no sort of, guessing about, let me pull in this person from over here because I can't do it. It's transparent and it's laid out in the policy.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
I do, so I was looking over this, Counselor Spalding had raised a question about the interpretation of legitimate First Amendment activities under some of the provisions, such as creating unreasonable noise, for example. There are absolutely circumstances under which what someone might define as unreasonable noise are a First Amendment activity. I don't know I was looking over this to think where the right place is to put in a provision about respecting First Amendment rights to protest and gather, and that this policy will not be considered an infringement on those. I would look to either the chief or the manager to suggest a place where that language could be included.
I do have at the police department a First Amendment's rights assemblies policy that has went through the police advisory committee and to council as well, that states that all those rights are protected in what we can and can't do at those assemblies.
So it sounds like maybe just a way to completely 1000% close the loop would be to add maybe a sentence in here saying, like, at all times this policy shall be in accord with existing policy, the existing First Amendment policy.
I see an issue with that.
Okay with that? Yeah, so we can do that as well. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify, noting that we will be changing this and bringing it back again for council approval. This is just a placeholder. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed?
Nay.
Noted, motion carries.
Yay!
Council, we're... Chris, the wonderful thing about Zoom is one click, but I won't do it. Council, we're at item 8E on the agenda. This is the flood resiliency plan update. Councilor Guston.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
I will hold off until I'll start. So tonight, this is in the nature of a retrospective look back on some programming that was already undertaken this past spring. And as we launch into this update, I will also note that the manager and I have met and have looked at a tentative schedule for flood resiliency plan updates through October. I will be typing that up and getting it out to council as soon as I check one or two small things on that to make sure that we are okay on the schedule for that. And will make my perennial offer that if there is something that anyone in the public or anyone on council would like to see at a different schedule than the one we have tentatively set, please do not hesitate to reach out. We will move the schedule around to accommodate that. All right, as a revisiting, these updates pertain to goals 1.4 and 1.5, which is 1.4 is about resident-led neighborhood flood knowledge, which is the understanding that folks can give information to us about how their neighborhoods flood. And 1.5, which is a commitment to city-sponsored educational workshops about making flood improvements on personal property and generally feeling sort of a little more in control of what happens on individual properties. Thank you. I want to note before I continue in this that the specific projects that I'm talking about this evening were made possible through the assistance of Tess Taylor, who's the city's housing and homelessness coordinator. Liaison, thank you, I knew I was getting the word wrong. Liaison, who supported all of these activities. And when I found the grant, which is listed on this slide, the Vermont Council on Rural Development's Climate Catalyst Innovation Fund, which is meant to be a sort of small bite community municipal projects that will move interesting things forward. And I pitched it to Tess and to Nancy Lynch, who was at the time the special projects coordinator. They were both very helpful and refined some of the writing I had done. So I just copied the text over from the website. Full credit to VCRD for providing this funding, which made this project possible. We received a total of $3,050 to carry out the workshops. The funding provided supported the food at the workshops, printing for both the flyers that advertised the workshops and that we used at the workshops, various supplies for the workshops, like a lot of graph paper and colored pencils and markers for one of them, and also allowed us to provide stipends for all of our partners who put in a great deal of work with us on these. So this is a two-part project. The first part was the neighborhood walks. There were 5 scheduled walks in neighborhoods. These are advertised on Front Porch Forum and also by putting flyers on the doors of folks in those neighborhoods. They were largely one street or a portion of one street. It was Orange Street, Prospect Street, Tremont Street, Berlin Street, and I'm blanking on the Orange. No, I said Orange.
Courier? Did you do like Park?
Courier Park, thank you very much. Whew. Courier Park. These were advertised in that way, and I will say they were kind of a mixed success. They were generally had small attendance. It was a small group of folks. I think at the most we had 6 or 7, but the conversations were phenomenal, and people would come out of their houses and like see us on the street and want to share more information about what they had seen, either directly during the flooding or just during a really heavy rainstorm. I scribbled all over many, many, many maps. We had people pointing out like this rain garden here that I planted on the corner of my property is what diverted all the water and kept my basement from flooding. Or, this storm drain hasn't been right since that flooding incident. So, and I think people really people are such keen observers of their neighborhoods and their streets, and they really appreciated the opportunity to share out the results of that observation and to have conversations about that and to be proud of the way that they and their neighbors already do work on their streets. We talked a lot about cleaning out storm drains, for example. So the information really focused on like super hyper-local stuff, like I said, like the way the crowding of this particular street has sort of sunk over the years, and the water always goes to this side now, which is digging out this particular corner, which is interesting information. We have a municipality that is heavily paved, it's heavily sloped, and our stormwater system, we already know, we've commissioned a full analysis, we already know is not serving the city as well as it might. And so considering things like this down to every street corner is important. So it really helped people feel seen and heard right in front of their own houses. The second part of these workshops were educational workshops. There were 4 workshops held at the Aldrich Library. This is a picture from the Rain Garden workshop. We partnered with Friends of the Winooski River, the Lake Champlain Sea Grant, and Michelle LaBarge-Burke, who was at the time the permit coordinator and is now over in doing our recreation work. The 4 workshops were how to make a rain barrel, how to plant a rain garden, do I need a permit, which is the one Michelle taught, and then a Storm Smart Property Assessment, which is a program that Friends of the Winooski River runs, which basically has people walk around your house and analyze the way that the land lays, where your gutters are spitting out, things you might not realize are causing or changing the way water flows on your property and maybe causing some of the challenges you'd like to address. And I do want to make a note that we are very grateful that there was a resident that allowed us to sort of look at their property directly as part of that. So people learned in the classroom what in theory a Storm Smart Assessment was, and then we actually went to a property. So we're very grateful that was able to work out. These, I would say, were a huge success. They were a ton of fun. We had lots of people come. People learned a ton, and people just really enjoyed, like, one of my favorite things that I was kind of like in the edges hoping would happen, but really, really happened, is that people talk to each other. They didn't just listen and ask questions of the instructors or the facilitators. They actually talked to their neighbors at the table. Most people came only themselves, maybe one other person from their household, but they were designing rain gardens together. And if you could go forward, there's just some really good pictures next. They were making the rain barrels together. So everyone pitched in on everyone, like, I don't know if no one just made their own rain barrel from start to finish. Everyone worked together to make all of these rain barrels, and then about half of the people went home with those rain barrels. Because and on the right there is like, that's one of the things that the grant funding was able to provide for us. We were able to buy and transport those barrels from a really lovely farmer in Lyndonville to make that possible for these workshops. So What's next? People have expressed a lot of interest in keeping these series going. Council, as part of the most recent flood plan that was adopted at the last meeting, we have kept that provision of the flood resiliency plan in place. We will be continuing both resident-led flood knowledge and also educational workshops. What I've listed here are workshop topics that people have either directly reached out to me to say, I can teach that, or I'd like to learn about that. So far, some of those ideas are making a go bag, which is like you have to grab and get out of there if flood is coming. How to plan a permeable driveway or patio. We talked a lot about driveways on these neighborhood walks and in the Storm Smart assessment, and people were thinking about like, oh, is there like, can I do something with my driveway? And gave me some leads on places that are doing sort of better for stormwater driveways right here in Vermont. So we might be able to bring someone in to teach about that. Getting your house ready for winter. Winter flooding is different than summer flooding. So what does it look like to think about what winter flooding might look like, how that experience can be different, and how water moves on your property in winter with a good melt and rain is different than how it looks in the summer. Regroup, thank you. Regroup sign-up workshops. This is a little bit of an idea of mine, maybe doing some tables at like Heritage Festival or something like that, in a continuing quest to get more folks connected to the information we're sharing about the city. And then we had talked about this one at council when the lead up to the flood plan, which is a water table day and a hands-on day where people can really just like mess around and see where the water goes when you create impediments or change stream beds and things like that. And so I'm also tossing it out to council to see if there are any other ideas that, or for that matter, the public would like to see for future workshops. I feel like there's never going to be a shortage of things to learn and teach about, but.
Yes. Maybe what to do in the event of an emergency, like of a flood. You know, like when that flood, if, you know, in the next 100 years, you know, that flood happens, you know, what do you do when the waters start to rise? Or, you know, who do you contact? Or, you know, those types of things, the who, what, when, where's, and whys of, you know, when there's a flood or, you know, that natural disaster.
Yeah. And I feel like, so thank you for mentioning, because I feel like I've been a tiny bit remiss in that Barre Up has also been doing some workshops called Facing the Waters.
Right.
And it was last night. Yeah, it was last night. Everything's blurred together. Last night, there was a great workshop at the library where they talked specifically about, like, here's what it looks like when your basement is flooding, and here's how to make some choices. So there's some really good content in that we should definitely expand on and repeat potentially. But thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I wondered if, because the workshops were a big success, and even if the neighborhood walks weren't as well attended, if we should repeat some of the things that we've already done. And I'm hoping that that's on your list as well. It doesn't say that, but, you know, the rain barrel workshop seemed like it was very positive. And I'm sure there are more people who would love to make a rain barrel that didn't show up, or learn how to make a rain garden, or whatever it might be. So I wonder if just having a repeat. And then the other part is, I wonder if having neighborhood walks in the summertime versus the wintertime, I think more people might turn out.
That is an extremely fair point. One of the walks, we didn't get anyone because it was one of those, it was so cold.
Was it like -20?
Oh my God, it was so bad.
Okay, yeah.
Tess and Adam and I just stood on the street corner like, the wind was, anyway, that one was tough. Absolutely fair point. We were sort of dealing with the strictures of the window of grant opportunity we had. But if there is a better window of grant opportunity for warmer street walks, I would love that on many levels.
Were any of these recorded by chance?
No, none of them were recorded. The materials for each workshop were distributed to everyone who was part of the workshop, but none of them really lent themselves to recording. They were all very like hands-on, people talking to each other kind of thing. And they were all designed for people to get their hands on stuff and do stuff. So I couldn't quite think about how to do a hybrid. The permitting one might be a good Zoom one in the future.
Yeah, I guess not even a Zoom thing, more so like CVTV. So like Tony Campos, having him and his crew go and just video it with the audio. So that way people could then also go back and watch it. Maybe there was a particular topic that somebody found interesting that they could then go back and look at. I just see a lot of those great opportunities with Tony and his.
Yeah. I'll certainly take a look at future topics, and if it feels like you wouldn't like have to pan and move around a lot, and it was a more straightforward presentation, I think that's absolutely something we can add in, that would lend itself to being recorded.
I'd
for
be
sure.
more than happy to donate my services to help facilitate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Anthony?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I would just make an observation that at the conclusion of Councilor Guston's excellent work trying to get a neighborhood feel on the ground, where the water moves, where the insufficiencies are. We know the stormwater system has got to be improved. Let me just make an observation. I think in the end, because we are in a bowl, the stormwater system per se is not going to save us. It's also how are we going to reconstruct and tailor the flow of the impervious surfaces that the city owns. I'm talking about roads, streets, so on. How are we going to, when we have the opportunity, and this is the build program, wouldn't it be wise to make sure that the DPW and Mr. Baker are consulted about, here's an opportunity when you regrade, take Prospect Street, there are various sequestering opportunities for water other than the storm drains. And I really think coordinating the street improvements, not only just storm drain thinking, but also where does the water run if it doesn't run through the storm drain? And Councilor Guston, as I obviously identified, several sequestering strategies and locations. And I would really urge that that information be shared with Mr. Baker. So when a municipal street project comes up, you say, okay, storm drains can handle this, but what about the excess that the storm drains cannot handle? What can we do? Is there some sort of sequestering a depression in the ground that we purposely create a basin to catch that water before it goes into the Stevens branch? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the only thing I would suggest is maybe a few more neighborhood meetings along the
Yeah.
lines of what, have them in the summer, although, sometimes fall, winter, I mean, that's when you get stuck doing them. But more, only because, Orange Street and, that was just Orange Street. And there are other folks, and even folks who just live, one street up didn't really feel,
Get this in.
didn't really feel,
Turn.
participate, like they were included.
Yeah.
And they were only one street away.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
maybe do more, because honestly, that was my favorite.
That was a lot of fun.
So I'd like to do more of those.
Yeah.
Even if they're quick, even if they're, or you do maybe 2 or 3 adjoining streets and say, look, we're going to be on this street for 15 minutes, we're going to keep things moving along. We're going to hit 3 streets, but we're only going to be on 8th Street for 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah,
I think that would be beneficial.
And
Anything, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to say just generally, which is that one of the things I had thought about a little bit in planning these, but hadn't anticipated getting such strong feedback from, is that people felt really good about being able to exert some measure of control over the flooding on their own property and their own streets. Like, I knew that was going to be part of it, but people really, really appreciated and liked getting their hands on doing something. And a lot of the, the rain gardens and the rain barrels aren't going to help if you're in the floodplain. But a lot of people at higher up elevations came down because they were thinking about how to help their neighbors who are down in the floodplains. They really felt like this was part of their citizenship in the city. And that also felt really good. So I did just want to name that for the folks who came. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else, Counselor? Any other questions from the council or anyone else? All right, then we will move on to item 8F on the agenda. This is the appointment of the Counselor liaisons to various committees. So currently, Cow Pasture Stewardship is Counselor Guston, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, Counselor Spalding. Police Advisory is Counselor Guston. Parks and Rec is Counselors Guston and Deering. And we have vacancies, counselor vacancies at Buildings and Facilities, Cemeteries, Unhoused Community, Transportation, and Public Works. I would take cemeteries, only because I have a particular interest in what is going on with the COSI Fund currently. Yes.
May I remove myself from, not that I'm not very fond of the Parks and Rec Committee, but I don't think it needs two of us, and I'm
No, it really doesn't.
thoroughly committed.
No.
Thank you.
You may.
I'd like to take buildings and facilities.
That feels like
Okay,
cheating,
so that
Jeff.
would
Kind of a fit.
Yeah, isn't it?
Do you have
I
any
don't know.
experience with that?
I have a little bit.
I'd like to take Transportation and Public Works.
Got it.
Wants to work with Tess?
When does that committee meet?
Ouch, Tess.
Tess, when does the committee meet?
I'd like to do that if I may. I'd like to do that if I may.
Yeah, of course. Any objection, Counselor Deering?
No, no, sir.
Okay. And 1, 2. That fill everything, so that, yep, that fills everything up.
Got it.
I don't think I think just the recognition, so everyone's fine with that? Everyone clear on that? So, okay, we have filled the counselor liaisons. That was awesome. The council will move on to 8G on the agenda. This is a discussion regarding the CDBG DER funds. You know, these are Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. That's the long version of it. Specifically, it refers to the $68 million secured by Senator Welch to assist communities in Vermont who were flooded during the 2023 event. So this is the 2023 event only. Of that $68 million, I think it's been identified that a tick over $50 million will be coming to, there you go, will be coming to Washington County. And so obviously Montpelier was affected during that 23 event. Berry City was certainly affected. There is an emphasis on housing, so as I've said a lot, I think this is a real opportunity for the city of Berry to get projects funded. You know, again, $55 million coming to Washington County. I think we can make a very strong case that there was really no community in Washington County that was affected more than the city of Berry. So thank you, Councilor Guston, for putting this list together. I knew I could count on you. So this is just kind of a kickoff discussion. We're going to have a lot more of these, Council, because you're going to be hearing a lot more about that. I don't know, Nicholas, do you want to run through the pre-application process and anticipated dates?
Yeah, so we've gotten a fair amount of information on this. I know ACCD announced the funding opportunity. I spoke with Pat Moulton, who's the recovery officer for Central Vermont, and she said the formal pre-application process is expected to open up through an online portal in August, and that there's also a pre-application process that the regional economic development corporations are helping with, where communities can get some technical assistance where they want applications in the middle of July. I did speak with Pat Moulton, who said that, you know, the pre-applications are encouraged, not required. So for example, I was asking in the context of, you know, if we didn't pre-apply for a project that was really compelling to the city, would that project be locked out? And she said that was not the case, right? So I think we should aim to have a really good sense of a short list here in the next month. We don't have the official date for when the online portal will go live, but certainly August is the date that was shared with me. So I think it's important to, to start to narrow our ideas down. I know there's a lot of good ideas that have been already discussed at the council level. Many things are already in progress in one way or the other, so I think some of these are pretty self-evident which one's going to rise to the top. But as Mayor, as you mentioned, there's a lot of money on the table, and it won't hurt to get more key projects on our list to put forward in this process.
So, Council, I didn't know if there was, again, I asked Council Guston to put this list together just so that you could see if there's anything that jumps out on you as sort of missing. Yes?
If I may, just another brief table setting remark for anyone following along at home or any other counselors. If you Google CDBG-DR, it's CDBG-DR and ACCD in Vermont, you'll land on the page where they lay out in writing and all the pre-application stuff, and there's a very specific rubric, so you can get a lot more information on that. Just want to let people know, sorry.
Thank you. So one thing that I'd like to specifically see on here is, I'd like to see that, I absolutely agree with your assessment of the downtown housing incentives, but we actually have a we have a specific location that looks more likely than not in terms of 143 North Main. So I'd like to see how we could support redevelopment, support certainly the raising of the existing building. Maybe that would dovetail with some brownfield stuff, and then, assisting the redevelopment of a multifamily, substantial multifamily building at that location. And the stormwater system upsizing, we've got some, could that be expanded to include, we've talked about the riverbed maintenance, some strategic riverbed maintenance and silt removal. It seemed like a small number, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that could be, because obviously, and this is a great list, I'm not at all being critical, it's a great list. But, we've said that mitigation is going to be extremely important. And so I think there needs to be a bit more emphasis. The fact that it totals $30 million doesn't surprise me. I think it should. And, that's my goal, but, the mid-30s. I was sort of hoping to see a few more mitigation projects outlined here. Anyone else? And again, you'll have another opportunity, but if there's, so don't feel like, this is your only bite at the apple. Yes, Councilor Spaulding.
I hear what you're saying about the downtown housing incentives, but I do think that having a grant to study the conditions for building housing in the designated downtown would be very helpful. I wonder how many of the buildings that are downtown might have office space that's just empty. I don't know. I don't know if there's any kind of report or any way to know what that is, especially with more remote workers and remote workers for the state, remote workers for any business. And so after the pandemic, I'm just curious if there's a way for us to incentivize that. And I also, I don't want to lose track of, I think that trying to further develop and further move along the plan for Newberry's is important, but at the same time, I think that we also have these other structures. So I don't know if we can do some kind of a balance between both of those things.
You could do both, fair enough. I mean, I'm aware, and listen, we all live here, so we all walk down Main Street. If you walk down Main Street, you can pretty much look up and tick off a list of, I think it's a mix. I think there are definitely, there are certainly one or two that I could think of, really only two, where the upper floors are absolutely vacant, and it's generally no one occupied them in the first place. I think the rest are probably a mix, where there could be, 50% of the upper floor may be occupied, and 50% is available for rent. So it could be a good strategy to say, okay, even if you're a responsible property owner, but you happen to have 50% vacant and you've been thinking about converting the entire upper floors to housing, but you just lack the funds to do that, maybe we could work with you, and people might respond positively to that. So, I think we could and should, when you look at the housing, the thousands of units that Vermont is projected to need, tens of thousands over the next 5 years, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do both. Yes?
On the mitigation list, I'd love to see some of the stormwater infrastructure stuff with, permeable parking, and we've talked about some of these things, stormwater catchment areas and cisterns.
Yes.
I just want to go back to what you said, Mayor, reiterate the riverbed maintenance. I believe that's very, very important, and that should be added on, like you said.
Do we want to get really controversial? We have a number of bridges that we've talked about removing. You're a big old chicken, aren't you?
No, I'm not. They're already, Mayor, they are already funded.
Huh?
They are, to my knowledge, already funded. That's why they're not on this
Fully?
list.
Or potentially?
Besides perhaps the local match, but yeah.
Yeah.
They're
the
under
local match-
HMGP, yeah.
Yeah, but the local match is not insignificant.
No, we could add those here. Everyone knows how I feel about
It's a
them.
significant,
Sure.
again, and we've had this discussion, I mean, even with that award, with the local match, we don't have the funds. So we either have to find them either through another grant, have to appropriate them, so this would be a way to leverage those funds and bring that, at least bring that discussion to fruition. As I've told people, look, we're not going to start pulling bridges out without a number of public hearings, but until we have the funding in hand, we're not going to, as far as I'm concerned, waste our time having a public hearing about something that we don't have the funding for fully. Mr. Anthony?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the realm of mitigation, and you've already mentioned it, I would just point out that there are several projects that are all but funded to create mitigation by expanding the river course in the areas where FEMA has and the state has agreed to buyouts.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me directing both street flows and stream flows into those areas, which are created obviously to be catchment areas. And there's about 4 of them. Part of them coincide with the city council's task force for river access, but part of them just coincide with the fact that FEMA has agreed to buy out significant parcels, which cannot be built on, but they could surely result in mitigation resources. Thank you.
Thank you. And one other thing that I didn't see on here that I think is very important is North End Gateway. Something, don't know what, because I'll be hoping, council, that I can call 2 meetings next Tuesday and Wednesday. It's an off week. And I think, the sooner we can start having that discussion with the neighborhoods, I was hoping to have it, as long as you're here, Mr. Denti, I was hoping to have it either at the Mutwa parking lot or preferably indoors. I mean, I want people from the neighborhood, people who might be able to walk. So I don't know if the Mutwa has anything going on next Tuesday or Wednesday, because I was thinking you just can't count on the weather forecast. It's either 90 degrees or it's raining, one or the other. So I thought having something indoors, and personally, I'd like to really have it in a section of town where folks don't have transportation, they can walk. So I was hoping to do that next Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'll be in touch with you. Again, this is a bit of a short week, so I apologize, but I think we've got to have, I think the North End needs to be on this list, and it's probably going to be a significant dollar amount between the proposed greenway that some people loved it, some people didn't like it. I personally like the greenway idea, where properties along 302 are purchased and create water storage areas, and then we further develop the areas moving kind of up Beckley Hill, but not really up Beckley Hill to that higher elevation. Yes?
I just, in thinking about that and these projects, when I sort of put this list together, we have such a short runway to apply for some very complicated grants and put in, I would love to, I had estimated 3 to 5 million for stormwater system, like we could spend 10 without batting an eye, but we just don't know what we need, and we won't know what we need in time to apply.
I think we could.
So.
And I think we could present, obviously, putting the North End back the way it should be it's not a one and done project. It's absolutely a phased approach. And even this funding, we could easily spend $55 million in the North End when you look at the housing need and the elevation need and some of the buyouts and some of the mitigation. We could spend the whole $55 million in the North End. We know that that's not realistic. But I think we need, I don't think it will be necessarily a plan that would absolutely define, look, we're all renters. We like to think of us, we're all renters. We're all here for a limited period of time. So, any plan in the North End is going to be a very, very multi-year plan, and chances are most of us won't be here as councilors or mayor to see it to fruition, but I am determined to submit something on behalf of the North End. I just don't know what something is yet. Yes.
And just as a useful clarifying point for council, that, and manager and mayor, I think that we've officially confirmed that this funding cannot be used for acquisition for redevelopment. If
That
it's
is
used
correct,
for
yeah.
acquisition, it falls under FEMA guidelines for permanent green space. So we would have to look to other funding for site control for any redevelopment projects that might become.
But when you look at increase in grand list value, I was talking to a reporter recently about what I consider the good old days when there were no developers developing infrastructure. It was all done by municipalities. And the beauty of a municipality is it goes on forever. It literally lasts. If our democracy lasts and America lasts, then our municipalities go on for hundreds of years. They've already gone on for hundreds of years. And when you think about a municipality, what individuals don't have is time, and we can't make more of it. No one can. So for a developer to say, I'm going to buy this swath of land, and I'm going to develop it over the next 20 years, and I'm going to write a mortgage that is a 50-year amortization. Well, developers certainly can't do that. They won't be around for 50 years. Municipalities used to do all the development, and honestly, the more I look at it, that was a better business model. It worked better. And so who knows? Maybe in the North End, we get back a little bit to a model that looks more like that, where the municipality is developing lots so that people like Down Street, young couples, older couples, Central Vermont Council on Aging, so they can develop homes. So, but I am determined to do something, just give you a warning. I am determined to do something for the North End and submit something on behalf of the North End if council approves that. So anything else, folks? If not, we'll move off. I'll certainly keep you in the loop on upcoming meetings, but I think it's time to just get out into a few neighborhoods and talk to folks about what could be. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, was there anyone else with a comment? No? Okay, and we'll move on. Council, we're at item 8H on the agenda. Councilor Spalding, this was your requested item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have, based on the emails that we've all received and the actions of a particular cemetery committee member, I'd like to discuss the reconsideration of the appointment of that member of the cemetery committee.
Okay. And how would you like to do that?
Well,
That we can speak to folks in executive session, we can speak to folks in open session, an executive session, and look, I'll just sort of set the table here. Mr. Cecchinelli contacted me 2 weeks ago, or maybe a little over 2 weeks ago, and said he would like to come in and address the council regarding this particular item. I didn't know that it was appropriate under visitors and communications. At the time, Mr. Cecchinelli chairs the cemetery committee. And this is my mistake. I assumed that Mr. Cecchinelli was speaking on behalf of the cemetery committee as a whole, a majority of the cemetery committee members. I spoke to Mr. Cecchinelli, said, well, I don't think open session is exactly appropriate. Why don't you give me a few weeks, we'll schedule an open session. Subsequent to that, I had a conversation with the city manager, and I learned that I was incorrect in my assumption that Mr. Cecchinelli was speaking on behalf of the entire committee, that the committee had discussed it, and this is something the committee wanted. That's actually not the case. So at that point, manager contacted Mr. Cecchinelli and said there would be no executive session because it was a single member of the committee, not a, I was mistaken, quite frankly. And so I apologize for that, Mr. Cecchinelli. Since that, Mr. Cecchinelli decided that he was going to come into executive session this evening. He made the council aware of that. I know that council has been provided with a number of emails, so I think you're pretty thoroughly briefed on the subject. As far as I'm concerned, this is probably a matter that is best considered in terms of any testimony or talking to people, probably best considered in executive session, but that's absolutely up to the council.
I have no preference.
Folks, don't all jump at once.
No preference.
And Mr. Cecchinelli, do you have a preference?
I do not. I just wanted a clarification that all chairs were asked to submit a letter in support. I submitted that letter.
Why don't you come up if you're going to speak?
Completely forgot about that. Councilors, Mr. Mayor, Giuliano Cecchinelli, Chair of the Cemetery Committee. All chairs were asked to submit a letter in support of reappointments for committee members. I did submit 2 letters for 2 committee members in their reappointment. One was in support, one was not in support. And the letter of non-support was not submitted to the council during that time. So I feel the council is missing vital information on this committee member. So that's where I'm coming from. I was asked by the council to submit that, and it did not happen. So, and there is no mechanism for the other committee chairs to consult their committees on support or non-support. So that's where I am on that issue.
Mm-hmm. So do you want to speak?
Yeah, I can speak to that.
What happened to the letter? I've gotten an explanation.
Sure, I can speak to that.
In terms of what happened, but.
So the appointment process was being handled by a staff member who I think took the directions literally, which was, do we have a letter of support for this person or no? And there was no letter of support. So the individual was informed that they had to come to the meeting to do a council interview. Now I want to clarify that the process in the municipal bodies and appointments policy for the chair's letter, the purpose of that is if a letter of support, it doesn't talk about letter of support or opposition, it talks about letter of support for a candidate, and all that does is spare that person from having to come to a council meeting if they have support from the chair and have been previously appointed. The intent is not for the chair to, for lack of a better term, tank that appointment, right? So I just want to clarify that piece of the policy. And yes, that letter, it didn't come to me, which is why it wasn't in the packet. To be quite candid, if that letter had come to me, I wouldn't have put something in the packet to publicly disparage a person who didn't have a chance to defend themselves. So what I probably would have done is either shared it with the council privately and asked you to come to an executive session. So I wouldn't have put it in the public packet anyhow, if it had come to my attention. But I do want to clarify, I think it's an important distinction about what the municipal body's policy does say about the chair's support, because really the intent is to just save that person from having to come into a meeting. It doesn't really have any purpose beyond that. The appointment that is in question was publicly warned on an agenda. If somebody had opposition to it, they certainly could have shown up at that meeting to also express their concern to the council. So that's just a little bit of background. Mayor, I want to throw a little, just a point of order. This is Carol's usual stomping ground. I don't want to put Clerk Mativi in a tough spot, but I believe if this does move forward tonight, you're talking about a rescission of a vote, which does require a 2/3 vote because it hasn't been previously warned. So I'm doing some back of the envelope Robert's Rules of Orders. I just want to make sure that's also clear to the council. It's not a reconsideration because this didn't happen at this meeting. It wasn't warned on the agenda, so if it had been warned, it would only require a majority. This is an unwarned rescission, which requires a 2/3. I just want to make sure that's your understanding as well. And
Well, I have two. We don't have, I'm not aware of an instance where the council has removed, this appointment has been made. It would be a rescission, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. However, I'm also mindful of the fact that, for example, the mayor, I make appointments to the Barre Housing Authority Board. Those members serve at the pleasure of the mayor, just as every volunteer serves at the pleasure of the council. Council has the authority to make appointments, and the council has the authority to remove members. Obviously, the council needs cause. For example, if it was suggested that we remove someone who was considered a protected class, for example, you didn't like their religion, I'd gavel you down so quick you wouldn't believe it. If you said, well, look, I don't like someone, we'd obviously have a very thorough discussion about that, provided you weren't, impeding on a protected class. So I see both sides of it. Council has the ability to remove members. That's clear. So it's been suggested that, well, what's your policy? We don't really need a policy, as long as you're not violating someone's right to due process. City council can remove people from committees. So I could see it either way. In this particular instance, I think you've all received a fairly thorough briefing. I think it's important to hear people out. And as I said, if folks are more comfortable speaking to the council in executive session, I think this is more an executive session item than it is an open item. But again, that's at the purview of 4 members of the council. Yes.
I need to kind of get this out. I heard about this probably a few months ago. And at first I was really for the removal. And then I spoke to a few people and learned that there has been a process where the person in question has been, I don't want to say, she's been spoken to, understands, what had happened. And I guess, now I'm at the thing, well, everybody deserves, a second chance. So I guess what I'm saying, I'm hoping from everybody else, this is a hard one because, again, at first I was totally for removal until I talked to people and, saw a different side of what has happened since then as far as being brought in, I don't know what the correct term, she has been spoken to about it. and understands the situation. Obviously seems to enjoy the position and doing it. So I guess what I'm just trying to air out my feelings on this one because I really don't want to make a public decision one way or the other. Might have to.
Yes.
In light of the emails we got tonight, I think this needs to be discussed in executive session.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion, there's a second. Who would you envision would be participating?
Definitely the member in question.
No, I'll need to have you name them. Thank you.
Eileen Glander,
Okay,
myself, and there are some family members here, so the party's affected.
okay. I know you, Wendy, but I know you as Wendy Chicario, which you're not anymore. Sorry.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, of course. Well, it's got to be germane to the, yeah, okay.
So, I'm the one that wrote, my name is Wendy Brown. I'm the one that wrote the email. Yes, it was very emotional, and I'm trying not to be emotional at this time. Have any of you ever lost a child? Have any of you ever gone to the cemetery with your grandchild to go put an item on their dad's grave? A 10-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay, so
have it
Wendy,
disappear.
okay,
So
so
I'm just
what we're
saying-
talking about now is executive session, which means we're not excluding you and we're not proposing to exclude you or anyone. But we would turn off the cameras and it would be the folks who were just, obviously the manager and the city council. And we would close the door, we would turn off the cameras and we would speak to you. I know this is very emotional for you.
My husband and I would like to be part of that.
Oh, of course, yeah, you are, and during that, so that's what we're discussing now. I was just asking Mr. Cecchinelli who would be participating, and he named the folks who would be, and there's one person here with you as well, correct? And you're a member of the cemetery committee as well, and you would like to participate? Oh, okay, so is council clear? Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Anthony? Oh, I'm not sure if he raised his hand or if it was up from before. I didn't.
Probably been up.
Oh, maybe.
I think
He
it,
raised it, but I
think he raised.
oh, he did?
yeah, but.
Yeah.
Is he still there? Peter? Maybe it was by accident. Well, he's not responding, so,
He can't have,
Sit down.
oh, what?
Nicholas.
I took it down.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Oh.
he is. Peter,
There we go.
will
He is here.
tell you why. I really think it's obligatory for you to state what the criteria is under municipal law. And if you claim it's personnel, I would argue that committee members and the council's responsibility for committee members do not include personnel or are not part of the personnel exemption. Thanks.
Thank you. So, council, there is a motion the first would be a motion for findings. So I assume that was your motion, that was your second?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying
Excuse me.
aye.
Wait.
Aye. Oh, yes. Did you have a question?
I just would like to know to Peter's question, what would we be going into executive session?
What are the findings?
What are the findings and what would what's the reason that's named in law, in statute?
Well,
Sorry, I'm looking it up.
I think that, I think it would fall under a disciplinary matter. We're talking about whether conduct warrants the removal of regardless of whether it's a volunteer or a paid position, I think it's the same. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Would other committee members be able to be present in the executive session?
If they were here, if they were here, ma'am, but not, again, you're the only committee, well, you and Mr. Cecchinelli and Ms. Gillander are the only ones that I'm aware of who are here. So if others were here, yes, they would be able to participate.
If I may?
Yeah, of course.
So, under I'm sorry, there's the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for its final decision during the open meeting. So I think that would fall under that category. I just am saying that out loud to feel good about doing this in executive session, so.
Okay, noted. Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? You were no, correct?
No, I said aye.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I thought you said you didn't. Okay, you didn't want to do it that way.
No.
And I'll need a motion to enter executive session.
And invite, excuse me, or do we need to name the people that we are inviting?
Yes, it would be Mr. Cecchinelli, Wendy Brown, not Chicario, Mr. Brown, Eileen Gilliander, Helen Long, city manager, and obviously city council. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
And a second? Moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, council will be in executive session in about 5 minutes. I'm not sure. We actually have one more item on the agenda. I'm not sure if there will be a decision as a result of this executive session. We'll see. Yeah, take 5.
There's still people here.
Peter and David.
Let me just, I'll let our camera, okay, camera is started. We are recording. Council, I would entertain a motion to exit executive session.
So moved. Second.
It's moved, and it's moved by Councilor Bergeron, seconded by Councilor Deering to exit executive session. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, thank you very much. We had item 8I, and I apologize, Councilor, I forgot what it was. It's been so long.
It was about my constituent Sue Higby's email and concerns about how we manage our public discussion, and her excellent suggestion about how we might handle the public comments differently. And in the interests of time, I just have a proposal, a proposal of a way we can do that, do this. And it's a little bit modifying what Sue suggested, where she said, you should look around at how many people are there, figure out how many minutes you want to spend on discussion, and then divide up the number of available minutes by the number of people who are present and set a timer. And that is definitely objective and clear and enforceable and, like I said, objective. My own personal bias is that I feel like if people have come to council that, they've taken the trouble to come here, we should let them have their say, whatever it is. But I also recognize that we could be here until midnight every single time. But one of the concerns that I have is that the way we do it now, it does, and I recognize that everyone's perception of meetings is subjective unless you actually time how much time everybody gets. But subjectively, it looks like people are more likely to be silenced if they're saying things that are in opposition to the person who's managing the discussion. So my suggestion is that we either specify a limited length of time and do timekeeping. So you say everybody gets 4 minutes, and a minute out, you let them know they have a minute and they should wind up, and then you set a timer, and when the timer goes off, you say thank you. Or that we rotate, and I think we should probably rotate the timekeeping method no matter what we do. The other one is to say that we appoint a member of the council that rotates. So, it would be the senior member from the senior counselor from Ward 1, and then for one meeting, and then the next meeting, it would be the senior counselor from Ward 2, and so forth, and rotate that through. And in that instance, you would have that person be responsible for saying You're starting to, it sounds like you're repeating yourself. Can you please make any additional points that you haven't wind up? You have a minute when things seem to be getting out of hand. And that way, if that responsibility rotates, then the perception that the only people who get silenced are the ones, that there's just a little crew of people who get silenced is removed.
Yeah.
I think the mayor should continue the way he's doing it. We don't need to rotate different. It's just gonna get more confusing. I do agree with the time limit. I think these people should be able to speak for 2 or 3 minutes and only once on the subject. If a new subject comes, we have the same 4 people zooming in who never show up and continuously repeating themselves. So if it's a new topic, you can speak again, but you're not gonna speak on the same topic over and over and over. So I do agree with her there on that one, big time.
I mean, I thought tonight it went.
Oh, tonight was great.
It went really well.
I did, last meeting. That's
And
right.
I asked people in the beginning, many of you have spoken before, and if you're going to make the same
Exactly.
point, I'm going to let you make the same point. Please be brief.
No, I
And
think
folks
that
were great tonight.
It worked tonight, but I also think that, at this point, the people who were in opposition were very clear that they didn't have the political muscle to stop this.
Yep.
And that there was, so there's a certain, self-editing that goes on. I mean, I did see the little things that they held up that said shame. I mean, that's fine. They're expressing their feelings, and I don't have any problem with that. But
Absolutely.
last meeting it was clear it was awkward. Sue was very uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable.
Well, look, some people I don't know why Ellen Kay gets the way she gets. I'll be very honest with you. I do not sit here, and anytime any of you want to sit in the center chair for a meeting, let me know. Because you're trying to watch that screen, you're trying to watch this screen, you're trying to see the order in which people put their hands up. Sure. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I don't even see. I just see the 2 hands. Most of the time, the first person will pop to the left-hand corner there. Not always.
Right.
And God help me if I happen to call on someone before I call on Ellen. She just is rude and jumps right in, and I won't have it. Everyone gets their opportunity to speak. I mean, that's the way it should be. And I've simply explained to people that I am not a big fan of strict time limits, because there are times when people go on for 15 minutes and I wish they would go on for 20, because I'm getting all kinds of new information. And they're sorry, and they'll criticize me for this, but there are times when people speak for 2 minutes and I wish they'd have spoken for a lot less.
Sure.
So, but everyone gets the opportunity, whether they agree with me or disagree with me, everyone gets an opportunity to speak. And I think when you start holding it to time limits, I think, I do need to be more mindful of reminding people to please be brief. And I'm going to do that, as I did this evening. But like I said, it's a real balancing act when there are people who come to the council meeting who have never been to a council meeting before, and they're terrified. And then there are people like the gentleman earlier this evening, well, you just care about yourself. Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Decades of service, but yeah, but regardless, you treat them all with the same respect, and I hope that's what I always do, until they don't treat me with respect, and then Nicholas is, quick draw with the mute. Yes?
So here's I've never been the mayor, I've never sat in the center seat, but I have had the opportunity to be the chair of the school board, and I did institute a 2-minute rule because people were just drowning on, and I was trying to have timely meetings. And I think, I hear what you're saying about allowing people to talk. I also think that having people come in and go on and on and on isn't really helpful. And how we can encourage people to be brief, if that's you reminding them, fantastic. If it's having a timer, even better. I just think that it is a sign of mutual respect, because it's our time, we're here, and for the people who want to continue to join us, it's 10:30 at night now, and like, how can we make sure that we're being productive and being as coherent as we possibly can? I'm not very coherent right now because it's 10:30. And so how can we make sure that we are keeping our meetings timely and efficient, but also in the place where we can make good decisions? So that's I hear what you're saying, and at the same time, I think it's a balance. I think these are good suggestions. I mean, if you don't want to have, a strict, you get 2 minutes, I would say that, we at the school board, when I was recently on it, we have the chair and then we have a timekeeper. And they just sort of give a little signal like, okay, you've had 2 minutes. They don't interrupt them, they don't cut them off, but it's just sort of okay, that's 2 minutes. And that's just helpful for the people to know, okay, you've been talking for 2 minutes. Lots of people don't even talk for 2 minutes. So you give them 2 minutes and they talk for 30 seconds and they think they've been talking for 5. So they just don't really have an idea. So I think it might be helpful to just have some kind of expectation that we need to be brief and succinct.
Point taken. I mean, we can be, like I said, it's always the strict 2 minutes. Not every subject is the same.
Well, sure.
I mean, for the first time that I remember, some time ago, the governor came in under visitors and communications to talk about the North End. We didn't hold him to 2 minutes, not even close. But how often do you get a sitting governor at a Barre City Council meeting? Only once that I can ever remember. Yes.
I've attended those school board meetings where we have a 2-minute time limit, and sometimes it's just not enough to say what needs to be said, especially when you're not allowed to speak again, or really at all for that matter. I really appreciate the way that you run things, Mr. Mayor, with how giving the people an opportunity to speak. But sometimes I also feel like as civil servants, we're not giving people the opportunities that they want by giving them a time limit to speak. That, I get it, it's 10:30 at night. Nobody really wants to be here at 10:30 at night. But these are some of the things that we sign up for when we decide to put in a consent for candidate. Hold on.
I'm raising my hand.
Okay, sorry, it looked like you were getting. So, in the time that I've been on council in the last 3 years, I've never had to be at a meeting, as long as I've been to school board meetings, where we've had 2-minute time sessions. So just based on my experiences sitting here and sitting at school board meetings where there's a 2-minute timer, and here where there's no timer, these meetings typically get done much, much quicker and more efficiently than any school board meeting I've ever been to.
Yes.
I'm not suggesting that I don't want to be here at 10:30. I don't think it's fair for the fact that we're here at 10:30 and this is a public meeting, and people who want to participate are, they're gone. Everyone is gone because it's 10:30 at night. Right. And so I'm just saying to be mindful of the fact that we are conducting city business, and to do it at 10:30 at night isn't really conducive to most people's schedules. That's all I'm saying. So to be respectful of that as well.
Well, your points are well taken. I will try to do a better job, as I did this evening, because I said, holy cow, and honestly, I looked at the folks who were on the screen and I said, oh Lordy, it's the same folks who are going to make the same points. And to their credit, I think they understood the resolve of the council, but, to their credit, when I said, look, if you want to make your point, but a lot of you, if you're making the same point, please be brief. So I learned something tonight. I'm going to take that more to heart, to remind people, please be brief. If that doesn't work and we end up, if we do have 20 people trying to burn up an hour and a half of our time and pushing our agenda to 11 o'clock at night, then I might be inclined to say, okay, I don't know, I think 2's a little quick, but I might do 3. Yes.
I think there is room for a balance here, which is that some topics that come before council, quite rightly, a lot of people have a lot to say. about them. And I don't, at the same time, I think it is part of our job as elected officials to listen to what people have to say, and sometimes that goes for quite a while. I think that there could be room, the trick would be identifying which, I think we can make reasonable guesses about most things, what is going to engender a lot of public comment. Sorry. Yeah, no, that was the binder I had in my lap. What is going to engender a lot of public comment, and it might be interesting to explore, it might be useful to explore, looking at an agenda item or having a sort of policy in reserve of 3 minutes. Okay, going into this one, folks, the 3-minute rule is going to apply, so we're going to set a timekeeper. I don't agree with having it for every conversation, but I think there are some where it's out of respect for everyone's sort of space and ability to both be heard and to hear what other people have to say, that there may be some debates for which that is a reasonable limit.
Yeah. No, we need to do, on some of those issues, I absolutely need to do a better job keeping folks on task. And like I said, the hardest part is when they start going, and I really don't like interrupting people, and they start making the same points that look, just because I hear something 5 times, it doesn't mean I consider it more important. Hey, 3 other people just made that same point, but it's their time, I've recognized them, and then I don't really want to elect them. And a lot of times what I think about is the people when I went door to door who gave me a lot more than 2 minutes. And now it's their turn. And even the people who frequent the council meetings, okay, well, on one hand, I think, okay, so the people who are here every week and want to address the council should I give them less? Well, wait a minute, we're the ones who encourage participation.
Right.
So it's a balancing act. I'll try to do a better job.
I'm not actually in favor of necessarily time limits. Maybe I wasn't clear. But I am concerned about the perception of how equitably the time is distributed.
I'm not aware that, if I ever have, let me know. I'm not aware that I have ever looked at someone who is in opposition to something that I might say or a position I may take and given them less time. I have shut people down who have gotten rude. I have shut people down who have sworn. I expect a certain level of decorum. Just because someone agrees with me, I don't believe I treat them differently. I think I recognize them, I let them, again, there have been occasions where they're being redundant and they've said the same thing, they get on a second time and start saying the same thing they said the first time, a second time. And it's like, okay, you're saying the same thing you just said 30 minutes ago when I recognized you. And yeah, at that point, he got upset. Oh, well, and then he swore, and then he got muted, then he got booted.
Yep. I think if anything, you give the opposition more time.
I try.
Which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying, though, I think, what if people who actually show up should get first dibs on talking versus only, they make the effort to be here and just saying.
Yeah, well, they all get the same, like, this evening and even evenings when it drags on, but if you ever find me treating someone differently because they don't think the same way I do, I don't think I do that, let me know. And call me out, it's as simple as that. If you're calling me out because Jeremy wants to swear at me, whatever, I'm not only gonna mute him, I'm gonna boot him. I expect and demand a certain level of respect. I respect everyone who comes to the council meeting. So, anything else, folks?
No.
All right, upcoming business, we're gonna skip that. Roundtable, we're gonna skip that.
That's why I had the binder out. That's why I had the
Okay,
binder.
go ahead, you got your binder.
The binder out with that.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to let council know that, as I described earlier, the manager and I set out flood resiliency plan updates through October, and that at our next planned city council meeting 2 weeks from tonight, the update will be about Prospect Heights.
Great. We'll be looking forward to that.
I have a roundtable if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
So I've asked the Aldrich Library to do a book club, and we're going to read Poverty by America, and we're going to have a discussion on it on July 17th at 5:30 at the Aldrich. And I'm just encouraging everyone to come, read the book, or read part of the book and come.
What's the date again?
July 17th.
It's a fantastic book.
At 5:30. And the way that I understand it, I'm only,
Is that something else? July 17th
Committee
rings
meetings,
a bell.
cemetery committee.
No, 7.
No, it's Transportation and Public Works, 17th.
if you can't make it,
Read the book anyway.
read the book anyway,
It's
and
really
we could
good.
discuss. Okay.
There we go.
Thank you. And I would
want-
encourage anyone from home who's watching or
I want to
who's,
say thank you. It's nice to see Ward 3 getting sidewalks and paving being done. It looks nice, and I appreciate it, and I'm sure the constituents and appreciate it as well.
Awesome. Jeff?
Barre Community Baseball District 4 Tournament being held here in Barre. First game is Thursday, July 3rd at Bond Field versus Linden. The Barre boys are looking good.
Good. There you go.
Used to be, yeah.
Justin?
I had a lot of fun welcoming Lafayette to Barre on Saturday. It was legitimately really cool. And I'm a little bit jaded about that kind of thing. So huge shout out to Donna and Jeff who came before council to talk about that, Donna came with like a fistful of French flags that she handed out to everyone and we all waved. It was actually really cool. So
Awesome.
Sometime when you're downtown at the library, just take a look around Mr. Pickwick's feet. There are some new plantings. All perennials, so.
Counselor?
Today's July 1st. It is the opening of BYSA football registration. I am not coaching or the director this year, but there are lots of great people involved, and the registration will go on for the month of July. So register and get your child engaged in football, boys and girls.
Awesome. Awesome. Just want to wish America a very happy birthday. Hope everyone has a wonderful 4th of July weekend. I hope they enjoy themselves, see their family. Promise of America, I still believe. It's a little messy right now, but you know what? I've always maintained that, honestly, that is my favorite phrase in the world, the promise of America, and I've always maintained that that promise is not kept in Washington. It's kept right here in cities like Barre, Vermont, all across this great country. We are the boots on the ground, and we're the ones who will make things happen. So the big, beautiful bill, as a dad whose daughter spends her career making sure that children and elderly get SNAP benefits, I am horrified with what they are doing with the SNAP benefits. I think there's parts of the bill I like, to be honest with you, but there are parts of the bill I absolutely despise, and I'm hopeful that the Senate and House conferees strip it out. And one of those things is the SNAP benefits. I don't agree with it at all. So on that note, happy birthday, America. And council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, council. Have a great long weekend.
this is